So this video is for AQA A-level business studies, and it's going to focus on 10.3, so 3.10.3, which is managing strategic implementation. Now what I'm going to initially focus on is I'm going to look at network analysis. Now with regards to network analysis, it's a method of studying and analysing complex systems or decisions by examining the relationship between individual components within a network, and it is used to understand the structure and the behaviour of the network, providing insights that can inform decision making. So what we are going to be focused on is critical path analysis, which is a particular network, and how to make sure the network is completed, or the path is completed in the most efficient time. So critical path analysis is a project management tool, and it's used to plan, schedule and control complex projects. So it identifies all the activities required to complete a project, it estimates the duration of each activity, and it determines the dependencies between them. So critical path analysis helps to identify the critical path, which is a sequence of activities that must be completed on time for the project to be completed within its scheduled time frame. So by focusing on the critical path, project managers can identify potential delays and take appropriate actions to ensure that the project is completed on time. So to undertake network analysis, managers must think of all the activities involved in the project, which is a useful activity in itself because it obviously ensures that all different elements of the project has been considered. They estimate the time each activity will take, and they plan which activities can be undertaken simultaneously or which have to be done in sequence. Right, so this is going to be the example that we are going to use in this part of the video. And the first thing I'm going to focus on is the activity line. So literally this is just a line that represents the activity and how long the activity lasts for. So activity B lasts for example, 2 weeks. And it connects to the node. So what is a node? Well, a node represents a specific event or milestone in a project, such as the start or completion of a task. So the node is not an activity, but a moment in time for the project. Now we are going to start with completing the EST, which is the earliest start time, and that refers to the earliest possible start time of an activity based on its dependencies and any constraints that may exist. And this is again what we're going to focus on first, from node 1 to the very last node, just completing the EST. So if we think about this, we've got node 1, and this is the first stage of time. So clearly no activity has been attempted yet, so no time has passed. So the EST will simply be 0. However, then we have nodes 2, 3 and 4, which have experienced activities. So node 2, the EST would be 1, as the activity has lasted 1 week. For node 3, it would be 2 weeks. And for node 4, it would be 4 weeks. So the earliest start time that we can leave node 2 would be the 1 week, because that would show that activity A has been completed. The earliest start time we can leave node 3 is 2 weeks, because that shows that activity B has been completed, and the earliest start time we can start node 4, that moment in time, is 4 weeks, because activity C will have been completed. Right, okay, now we get to node 5, and node 5 is a little bit more complex, a little bit more complicated, because it has lots of activities from different nodes going into it. So what we need to consider is what's the earliest start time will be, and this will be the time it takes for all previous activities to have been completed. So let's imagine we went from node 2 and added 6 weeks. Well, that would be 7 weeks. But that wouldn't work, as activity F would not have been completed. So we'll have to go by activity F, meaning node 4, which is 4, and then you add it to the 7 weeks, and that'll be 11 weeks. So by 11 weeks, every single activity prior to it will have been completed, and therefore it will be the most efficient point at this moment in time to make sure that we can go ahead with the project without any delays. Right, so this will ensure that all activities have been completed before we move to the next stage, and the next stage is going to be, well, we've got node 6 and we've got node 7. Right, So if we think about node 6, node 6, we can only start it after activity H has been completed. So that will be in terms of 6. So 6 weeks we'll have completed it. But then we have a similar issue with 7. So node 7 we've got obviously activity G, but we've also got activity I. Now if we do 6 plus 3, we obviously get 9. But if we do 11 plus 5, we get 16. And on that 16th week, we can guarantee that H and I have been completed, so that should be absolutely fine. And then that means that when we get to node 8, we've got activity J to have been completed, which takes 2 weeks, so therefore we'll be on 18 weeks. Now you'll have noticed that the bottom right hasn't been completed in the node. And what that is the LFT. Now the LFT stands for the late finishing time. And in the context of critical path analysis, the LFT is the latest time that an activity can finish without delaying the completion of the entire project. So LFT refers to the latest time at which an activity can finish without delaying the project. So let's have a look at this. We know that we've reached the final node at 18 weeks. So the EST is 18, but there's obviously no other activities to have been completed. So therefore the latest finishing time will again obviously be 18. So we can work backwards from this point. So if we go back to node 7, we do 18 minus 2, we'll get 16. Now again, 16 and 16, if we finish on 16 and carry out activity J, which is 2 weeks, we'll get to 18, so it hasn't been delayed. So that's absolutely fine. Right, now in terms of node 6, what we do is we do our 16 and we'd minus our 3, and therefore we'd get 13 weeks. Now that actually means that there is some slack, and slack refers to the amount of time that an activity can be delayed without delaying the project completion time. So that slack is 7 weeks, as that's a difference between the EST and the LFT, which suggests it is not critical. Now for node 5, we'll do 16 minus 5, which will get us to 11. Now node 4 has both activities F and H again, so consider which LFT avoids delay. So if we went with 13 minus 2, then LFT would be 11. But then that would delay 7, so it'd have to be 4. So what I mean by that, if we had an LFT of 11, and then we carry out the activity of F, then that would actually be, we'd finish and we'd get to node 5 at 18, but that's not the case because we need to be at node 5 at 11 weeks. So it cannot be that we finish at 11 weeks. It has to be that we finish at 4 weeks. So if we did 11 minus 7, we'd get those 4 weeks. And then what we'd do is we'd have to go to node 3 and node 2. So 11 minus 6, 11 minus 3, and we'd get 8, and we'd get 5. Right, now we're at a point where we're getting back to node 1. Now remember, we started at 0 because there was no activities prior. So obviously we're going to finish at 0. We cannot finish any later than 0 because it would delay, obviously, the other nodes. But there's no reason for it to finish later than 0 because, like I said before, there's no activities. So if we did 4 minus 4, we'd get to 0. Right, okay, so the critical path is the path which does not involve any slack. So there's no room for delay. So it's crucial that it's completed on time, as otherwise the whole project will be delayed. So what it'll be C, it'll be F, it'll be G, and it'll be J. Now the nodes which I've circled is due to the slack, but also enables you to calculate the float time. So the float time, also known as slack time, is the amount of time that an activity in a project network can be delayed without affecting the overall project duration or the critical path. Right, so another key part of this specification, away from critical path analysis, is other examples of organisations and their structures. So we've had a look at many organisational structures throughout the whole A-level specification, whether that's tall, whether it's flat, whether it's mechanistic, organic. What we're going to look at in this one is we're going to look at functional, regional, matrix, and product based. So to begin with, let's start with functional. Now, a functional organisational structure is a type of organisational design that groups employees according to their roles and functions. So if we think about it from this one, we can see the R&D, we can see the finance, we can see marketing, and we can see manufacturing. So they're the functional areas. So in this structure, employees with similar skills and expertise are grouped together into departments such as marketing, finance, HR, operations, which is another example, and each department is managed by a department head who reports to the CEO or other top level executives. So this type of structure is often used in large organisations, and again, if we're linking it to different topics and different units, I've already done a video on this, but it's obviously suited to Handy's rural culture. So it can facilitate communication and coordination within departments, but it may actually result in less collaboration and slower decision making across, obviously, other departments. And therefore, a term known as silo may occur. In other words, there might be isolation between departments. So in other words, there'd be a lack of collaboration with maybe R&D and finance, or marketing and manufacturing. So there are some benefits, or it would lend itself to certain organisations and certain companies, and there's also issues. So we've got, for example, it's suited to a rural culture, as I mentioned before. It's suited to leadership which preferred planned strategies with incremental changes. It allows individuals to specialise in their functional areas. But as we said, it limits collaboration across departments. It may limit perspective. It could be a little bit bureaucratic. Right, the next one we're going to look at is regional. And a regional organisational structure, is a type of structure that groups employees and resources based on geographical regions or territories. So the organisation is divided into regions or zones, with each region having its own set of managers, employees and resources. So what we've got here is we've got the Southern, we've got the Midlands, we've got the Northern, and then we've got Europe and International. So regional structures are commonly used in businesses that have operations in multiple locations or territories. So multinational corporations, maybe we've got like retail chains and franchises. So the regional structure allows companies to tailor their operations to the unique characteristics and needs of each region while still maintaining some level of centralised control. So it would be decentralised in terms of the regions. So those regional managers can adapt to their local needs better. So what we can look at is we can look at some of the benefits. So when we look at the benefits of this type of organisational structure, as I've said before, it's suited to global companies, which have maybe high levels of responsiveness to local needs. So if you think about Bartlett and Goschel, it can improve logistical demands. It increases accountability because obviously you are responsible for your region. And I've already mentioned Bartlett and Goschel, but it could be seen in multi-domestic strategies. You could get duplicated functions because obviously you might get, let's say, a marketing manager in one region, but you've also got a marketing manager in another region and another region. So you do get that duplication, which could be avoided if it was a different structure. Sometimes because you are focusing and you decentralise based on different regions, it can cause inconsistencies. And there can be a little bit of competition and inter-regional conflict. Competition might sound good, but when it's internal and it leads to conflict, then that can impact the harmony of the company. And there might be a loss of global focus because there's actually too much local priorities being prioritised. Right, next one we're going to look at is a product-based organisational structure. And this is where companies organise their structure around its various products or product lines. So if you've got companies with a large product portfolio, you might see this. So as I've said, particularly useful companies that produce a variety of products or have a diverse range of business activities. So this one, you've got health, you've got beauty, you've got food, and then you've got admin and finance. So the key focus there is health, beauty, and food in terms of its products. So each product or product line will have its own team responsible for its development, its marketing, its sales and support. So this structure can lead to greater efficiency and focus in those products and in terms of developing those products and marketing. as each team is solely responsible for its own products. However, again, it may lead to duplication of resources and a lack of coordination between these product teams because you're so focused on, for example, health and beauty that actually you might be able to collaborate, you might be able to work together because you might have expertise which might help in both, but you're too focused on one area. So the reasons for having such a structure, well, improve customer satisfaction because you are specialising in that product. It's going to allow for faster decision making based on those products because obviously your focus is those products. Again, accountability is there because of the performance of your product, and because you are accountable for that product, it does encourage innovation because you want that product to be the best. But again, as I've mentioned before, duplication of effort. Again, there could be internal conflict because of competition. And it could be a little bit of a narrow focus. So the final one that we're going to look at is going to be a matrix structure. And the matrix structure is a hybrid of functional and product-based structures where employees are organised into teams or work groups with a dual reporting relationship, typically to both a functional manager and a product or project manager. So this structure is often used in large organisations that have a complex and diverse products that require input and expertise from multiple departments. So as we can see here, what we've got is we've got a pharmaceutical company, and they've got a research scientist, they've got a sales president, they've got engineering, they've got accountancy, and they've had to allow some of their specialists to join this project and work with these other areas. So this structure, like I said before, it is used in large organisations that have complex and diverse projects, and it requires input and expertise from these departments. So the matrix structure allows for greater flexibility and responsiveness to changing demands and priorities, but can also result in confusion and conflicts due to the complexity of reporting relationships. And there will lead to power or potential power struggles between these different areas. So for example, you've got one project, let's say Project B, and Project B, they are focused in managing the scientist B, sales detailer B, the engineer B, the accountant B, but all of those individuals are also working for the research team, the sales team, the engineering team, the accountant team, and they've all got their own objectives, what they're trying to achieve, and there's going to be a conflict. So Project B is not going to be happy with, for example, the sales president if they are making the sales detailer B do more work in sales rather than maybe on the project, or the sales manager is going to be unhappy if they believe that the sales detailer in B is neglecting their functional area because they're spending too much time on the project. So that conflict might occur. Right, so let's have a look at the benefits and the drawbacks. So what we've got, again, cross-functional work between teams. It enables expertise working together and collaborating, can help with flexibility, can help with resource utilisation. So for example, you can use personnel and technology across these different projects. I've already mentioned the management challenges and the dual reporting issues, and they're the main concerns with a matrix structure. Now, it's also worth remembering that it is possible for companies to operate, and I've already mentioned this before because I've said about matrix being used with functional and product based as well. But it is possible for organisational structures to operate with companies with multiple organisational structures. In fact, many large companies often use a combination of different structures, especially if they have multiple products, services, business units. So a company may use a functional structure for a certain department, such as finance, human resources, and marketing, whilst using a product-based structure for maybe its manufacturing division, or a regional structure for its sales and distribution network. So what this does, it allows the company to have a more flexible and adaptable design, organisational design, that can better meet the needs of its various business units. So it is probably worth pointing out that implementing and managing multiple structures, of course, is going to create a certain set of challenges. It is going to be hard, and there are going to be conflicts which need to be managed. There are going to be communication breakdowns, and that complexity does need to be handled by the more senior managers within the company.